Today I want to talk about what is it like to be in STEM or even just tech in general as a woman or a person of color or anyone who really dips into any minority group. But beyond that, what is it like to work in STEM when you're dealing with obstacles either A, related to your own personal life, or B, related to discrimination in terms of racism, sexism, ageism, or any other facet of discrimination. I want people to know that despite what obstacles they may face, whether those obstacles are with their health, with their mental health, with a toxic environment, with an environment that's not conducive to inclusivity, I want people to know that you can still be successful and you can navigate these environments and that you can still advocate for yourself. Given that, I want to share my story today and my experience working in STEM and tech, what I've learned along the way, and how I've become very successful at a young age. These are things that I wish that I had known and stories that I wish that I had heard before I entered the industry, so that I know that I wasn't alone and that when I ran into different obstacles, I wasn't crazy, that there wasn't something inherently wrong with me, but that these are things that are systemic and that are problems, and that despite what other obstacles that I faced, I could still be successful. And beyond my own personal problems or obstacles I faced in my personal life, the obstacles that I also faced within the environment that I was working in and studying in did not have the power to rob me of my success. And that I could still be successful and have confidence within myself that I could be okay and that I could strive and that I could go where I wanted to go in my career, and that none of the obstacles I faced could stop me. I share this video because it's important to talk about these things, and it's important to be vulnerable and to share our stories because we have no idea who's going to benefit from it. So as everyone knows, tech is absolutely booming right now. People are changing their majors and pursuing things like computer science, different facets of engineering. People are even changing their careers in later parts of their lives and doing coding boot camps or, completely changing into another facet that involves tech. I want people to know what the environment is like to work in tech, especially if you are a minority. And I want people to know that if they are choosing to make that career change, or if that's the career track that they're already on, that there are these obstacles that you may run into, and I want people to know not only that these are present, but also how to navigate them. Many people know tech is really a male-dominated kind of field, right? As many fields are. It's unfortunate that different industries have different levels of inclusivity. And of course, I will disclaim this that yes, of course, there are tech companies and tech environments that are very good at being not only inclusive, but diverse. And so this is not an all-inclusive statement, but I do want people to know that if they do run into the situations and scenarios that I've been in, that they aren't alone. So my goal in starting this channel really is I want to make content on helping people be successful, and people who are interested in tech, I want them to know how to overcome these obstacles and how to build that success within themselves. Let's get into a little bit of my background and my personal experience. Even as a kid, I always wanted to study physics. My dream was to become a quantum theoretical physicist. I was very inspired by the books and most of the work done by Dr. Michio Kaku, who's very interesting. He writes a lot of thought-provoking books about physics and possible future of it, and I was enamored. I was extremely passionate. I cared so much about it, and I knew that pursuing something like physics would be very fulfilling to me because I had this belief that it was the most superior field of study that ever was. But anyhow, so I ended up going to a Big Ten school, and for those who do not know what those institutions are, essentially in the US, they are very large research institutions that also have a lot of opportunities for sports and Division I athletes, etc. But anyhow, with respect to my career, it was a very large school with a very reputable program in physics, and they offered a lot of research opportunities. I had gotten in with a Bachelor of Arts degree, so I wasn't actually accepted into the College of Science and Engineering like I had wanted to be. Throughout my career there, I had worked to change my degree to a BS, Bachelor of Science. I studied physics. I also minored in math, and I had a physics engineering degree, which allowed me to create a focus in electrical engineering. Throughout my time there, I studied physics, math, and electrical engineering, and those were my primary courses. During my time at that university, I had also participated in a NASA-funded project where I actually led a team. After school, I went to a medical device company where I worked as a both software and systems engineer. I had a very multidisciplined experience there. That was a contracting role. And once that contract ended, I decided to pursue a small tech startup on the West Coast. I am from the Midwest, so this was a big move for me. During my kind of transition there, I worked a little bit as a software engineer, but I actually ended up moving my focus completely into systems engineering in that role. So let's talk about income. So for me, I consider myself successful not only because my degree was multidisciplined, but also because I was able to increase my income by a lot really fast. And I even started out an income that was much higher than the average income for my age group in my area. It's my first year out of college. I got a job before I graduated. I think I started actually 3 months before I even finished my degree. I actually started that job at salary of $25,000 over the average for my age group, and the reason I'm formulating it like this is the salary that I had may have been a lot in one area, however, somewhere else in the country or in the world or whatever, right, that might have been a lot less, and the perception of that really depends on where you're living and the cost of living for that area and the average income for that area. So I'm not going to disclose the actual numbers, but I will tell you about where I stood compared to the average. Once I left that job to join the startup, I increased my salary, this is after 1 year, by $30,000. By the end of that second year working at that startup, I had increased it even more with bonuses. I was lucky that my company had offered different stock options, etc., to almost 6 figures. For me, that was a very rapid increase in income, and I made a lot of income very fast, very young. This is my cat, Tabby. Tabby, say hi! So now I want to get into some of the issues that I faced in my personal life, as well as some obstacles that I faced within the environments of school, university, as well as working at tech companies. The reason that I want to talk about not only the obstacles that I faced at work or in tech, but also my health and my mental health struggles is to really show that the struggles and the obstacles that we may face can be completely multifaceted, and that the struggles that exist beyond just your domain and your field can also impact your ability to perform. But the caveat to that is, despite how many different aspects of your life have problems or stressors, health, mental health, family, etc., you can still be successful. And so that's why I feel that it's important to talk about these things. Let me dive into some of my struggles with my physical health. With my physical health, I have been through many different struggles in my life. I was pretty healthy up until I was about, I'd say 18, 19. I started struggling with a lot of different health problems. Let me start with kind of when I was 18. My freshman year of college, I had a deathly allergic peanut allergy, and I had eaten something that had peanuts in it. I didn't know. I had actually consumed a lot of it, completely unknowing that there was peanuts or peanut oil in it. My throat started closing up and hives, and I collapsed on the sidewalk. Someone was just an absolute saint, and they called 911 for me, and I woke up getting injected with Benadryl, steroids, EpiPen, and an oxygen mask, and spent a good couple of days in the hospital. That was pretty scary. I had come pretty close to death, honestly. I'm so lucky that someone called 911 when they did, or I would not be here today. So my sophomore year of college, I ended up moving into an apartment that had very poor ventilation, The windows did not open. In fact, the windows, I think, had like a metal frame that created a lot of condensation, particularly in the winter. Again, from the Midwest, and in the Midwest, the winters get super, super awful and cold. And I do not recommend ever going there in the winter, my personal opinion. But what ended up happening was that a lot of black mold, because of that condensation from the window and no ventilation, started growing inside the walls. In fact, I didn't know for about 9 months of living there that this mold was growing and that I was deathly allergic to it. All I knew was that I was having episodes of anaphylactic shock. Just randomly in the middle of the night, I'd get hives and my throat was closing and I had to take an EpiPen. I was probably hospitalized at least 25 to 30 times that year, just pumped full of steroids. And, honestly, at that point in time, I thought that my immune system was shutting down or something. I had no idea I was living in this black mold. So let that be a note that if you are experiencing that, for the love of God, get your home or apartment mold checked. My junior year is where my health really took a dip. I was working in a lab and I had an incredibly sharp, awful pain on the lower right side of my abdomen. I thought my appendix had burst or something. I had collapsed. I was vomiting, and one of my friends luckily was there. I think it was like a Saturday evening, so no one was there, but luckily my friend was there, and he was able to take me to the hospital. At the hospital, they had done some scans, and they thought, oh, you're probably just constipated or you're crampy or something, whatever stupid thing that male doctors do to women. I went to a follow-up appointment at an OBGYN where I found that there was a very large mass on my right ovary. I had to get a surgery to get it removed. I was very lucky that all I needed was the surgery. The surgery ended up removing the right ovary, the right fallopian tube, and part of my uterus. During that process, they also ended up injuring my left ovary. Honestly, I was so ill and so sick during that time, and even during recovery. I was so weak. I couldn't get up. I couldn't walk by myself. I was in the most horrible pain I'd ever been in my life. That tumor had gotten so big. I had to have my mom and my stepdad take care of me. It was truly a very tough time, and I'm so lucky to be here, because if that surgery was any later than it was, I probably would not be here today. After that surgery, I started my senior year of college. After I think a month of recovery, I was able to move back to school and take care of myself again. About 6 months later, the whole right side of my face drooped. It fell. I lost complete motor control over it. Within a couple hours after that, I lost the ability to walk. And it was like I'd tell my legs to walk, and my knees developed a tremor. I ended up having a very small stroke. That was definitely very scary. I was worried that I would never walk again. I did have to take some time off school, and I did have to do physical therapy. That was really hard. So now I've been graduated from college for almost 2 years in my career, and right now I have a lot of hormonal problems. I gain and I lose weight very rapidly, very unpredictably. I still deal with a lot of chronic pelvic health issues and pelvic pain. Sometimes that pain is so crippling that I do have to take time off of work. If I'm under a lot of stress or I'm not sleeping enough, some of those leg tremors do come back, and I have to really rest that off and completely take care of myself and not do anything stimulating or anything that requires a lot of thought process. So those are kind of the health issues that I've struggled with in the past and kind of how they affect me now. And I will say, for anyone who has struggled with health problems, you're not alone, you're not lazy, you're not a quitter. Because if you don't have your health and you don't put yourself and your health first, you have nothing, and you can't even do the things that you want to do in this life. So know that it's okay to stop and to rest and to take breaks and to focus on yourself. And if you know that having a lot of stress or something is going to push your health over the brink and end you back up in a hospital or something, stop and take those breaks and don't care about anyone else, because you have to care about yourself in those kinds of situations. So now I'm going to get into a little bit of my struggles with my mental health. Kind of right off the bat, freshman year, I was in a really stressful environment, an environment that was not inclusive towards me, and there weren't a lot of other people who looked like me or were minorities that were kind of in my vicinity. So I ended up struggling a lot with anxiety, depression, loneliness, and it was really hard. It was kind of a theme throughout college. For the longest time, I really thought there was something wrong with me. Why don't people like me? What's so awful about me? And moving to the West Coast, I mean, I always knew the Midwest was pretty racist, but it wasn't until I moved here where I saw other people who looked like me and other people who were also in mixed race relationships. I'm Indian and white, and my husband is white. You know, together I do look more Hispanic or something, and it's really nice to live in an area where there's other people who look like me, and people don't stare at me for being different. People don't ignore me when I talk because I don't look like them. Racism really, I think, led to a lot of my issues with anxiety, depression, loneliness during those years of my life. Beyond that, I had an experience when I was 19, which I will actually link down below. I did an interview on if you want to know more about it. Long story short, I had a pot brownie. Pot brownie gave me psychosis. Psychosis caused panic attacks driving on the highway, and I developed PTSD from this incident, which caused me to relive the incident over and over anytime I have a period of stress. It made it really challenging to drive on the highways. Anyone else who's also experienced PTSD probably knows what I'm talking about: derealization, depersonalization. There was a period of time I'd look in the mirror and I physically did not recognize my face, and it was terrifying. Again, I will link that down below, and you can go check that out if you want to know more about my experience with that, and also with exposure therapy and working with an anxiety recovery team. Another aspect to my mental health would probably be the development of imposter syndrome. In high school and everything, I was someone who performed really well, and I based all of my confidence in my grades. Don't ever do that. There's so much more than any single number will ever tell you that you will be. In college, it was really sexist, as I'll talk about later, issues that prevented me from getting the help I needed to succeed. I felt like I couldn't fail or I couldn't be wrong, because if I was wrong, then it was like proof to all these horrible sexist men in my life at that point in time that,
yeah, of course I wasn't good enough to be here. I'm a woman.
I felt this immense pressure to prove that I wasn't stupid because I was a girl, or because I had curves, or I like to wear makeup. Regardless of any of that, you know, being a woman does not inherently limit your intelligence. If anything, I'd argue that women are more intelligent because of the shit that we have to go through. Having to prove my intelligence just because of my gender and my skin color, it really made me fear that I wasn't good enough and that I shouldn't be there, and that some of the reasons I was failing wasn't because of these systemic issues, that there was something inherently bad about me or incompetent about me, and that was it all. It really formulated imposter syndrome, which was something that contributed a lot also to my anxiety. That made it really tough to be in an environment like that. Now I kind of want to get into some of the issues and obstacles that I faced within tech and engineering environments. I will preface this by saying that my experience is not going to be everyone's experience. Even other people of color may have a different experience. It could be better or it could be worse than mine. In college, in terms of classes and coursework and everything like that, I remember when I started my degree, there were probably 250 students, and probably like 40 something percent of us were women. By the time I graduated, there were only, I want to say, 5 women out of like 200 students to graduate with that degree. That could be wrong, but it was very small number. So there was a lot going on in that environment that made it very challenging for women. I'd say probably primarily having old tenured white man professors who think that people who look like you and have the same gender as you do not belong in their class or in their field simply because of those things. It made an environment where if I went to ask for help or I went to office hours, I was completely shamed for asking questions. Asking questions validated that I was stupid and not good enough to be there. I remember I got a C on an exam, and I went to talk to the professor. I wanted to know what I did wrong and I wanted to succeed. And office hours from TAs were not helpful at that point in time. I talked to the professor, and he told me straight up that,
Well, of course you failed my exam. You're a woman.
beyond that, I went to office hours with TAs. I had some TAs who Mind you, there were not a lot of other women in the field. Sometimes these TAs who were men, flirt with me, become attracted to me. I had one stalk me, sexually harass me. I remember at one point in time, had to completely remove my contact information from the university's website. My senior year, I had a professor who, I had spent a good couple of years building a really good relationship with. He'd come out to me, I'd rejected him. After that experience, I did ask him to write me a letter of recommendation, considering how much time I'd invested in getting to know him. And he told me that he could not write me a recommendation because
I was the worst student he ever had.
Now, mind you, I had a B+ in his class while I had that tumor, pretty much dying. He told me that he could write me a letter, but it wouldn't sound good. There was, again, kind of like sexual harassment from TAs and students and things like that. And I tried to talk to my friends who were also in the degree about that. And they told me that I was lying because no one would be attracted to someone that looks like you. It was a very toxic environment and one that I probably stayed in for far too long. I made it out, I graduated, and I entered the workforce. And at my first job, I was working with this team doing testing. And again, it was for a medical device company, so there was a lot of work that had to do with FDA regulations, etc. Beyond that, at that company, there were also a couple other people who worked in the lab, and I don't know if they thought that I just couldn't hear them, or I couldn't see them, or that I wasn't there, but they would make these awful, sexist, misogynistic remarks to each other about me. I was also young, and I didn't know how to advocate for myself at the time, so I just kind of waited it out because I knew my contract would end. All of this kind of sums up to say, if you have experienced any sort of sexist, racist trauma in your career, in your schooling, you aren't alone. You're not crazy. You're not stupid. You're not unworthy. You have every right in your being to be in those environments. Those environments should be conducive to you, and I'm so sorry if they haven't been. It does not take away from your worth. It does not take away from your ability to succeed, and I truly want you to know that, and I want you to know that you're not alone and it's okay. We all experience many different types of obstacles in our lives, beyond our career, our health, mental health, like I touched on. Comment down below if there's anything in your experience that, you resonated with my story, or that you want to share and that you want to vent and get off your chest. This is a space that's open to you. I really want to encourage people to know that it's okay, and being vulnerable is so valuable, and sharing your story can also help a lot of people. So thank you so much for listening to my experience and my story. I hope hearing how I excelled in my career really fast and having context of the obstacles that I faced kind of inspires you to know that despite what you're going through, how you're treated, where you're at in life, nothing can stop you from being successful. A large part of that is continuing to pursue your dream and pursuing your goals and your career, and not letting those things make you feel like you're never going to get there, or that you're unworthy of getting there, or any number of beliefs and obstacles. Everyone is worthy of pursuing their goals and pursuing their dreams, and especially in tech. And I know tech is, like I said in the beginning, a huge booming industry right now. And it's so important for people who are getting into that industry to know what people's experiences are like, but to also know that you can do it. It doesn't matter if you're pursuing a degree in college, or if you're 15 years down the road and you decide you want to take a coding boot camp. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you have going on in your life. Tech is for everyone, and tech should be for you too. I want to start this channel because I want to teach people what I've learned and how I've navigated a lot of those obstacles, and how to be successful, how to write a good resume, how to crush it in interviews. There's a lot of different skills that you can always develop at any point in your life to especially excel in tech. I hope you like this video. Give it a thumbs up. Feel free, again, share your stories down below. I want to hear what you've gone through, what you maybe resonated with. I hope to hear from you guys soon.